The gymnasium fell silent as the little girl's words hung in the air. My mom is a Navy SEAL. Laughter erupted immediately. The principal's condescending smile, the parents' knowing glances, the children's cruel whispers, all converging to shame a child they assumed was lying. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes as she clutched the worn photograph tighter, but then she knelt beside her service dog and whispered something only he could understand. What happened next left everyone frozen in disbelief, the principal's face draining of color as undeniable proof unfolded before hundreds of witnesses. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you value stories of hidden courage and vindication, consider subscribing to join our community of viewers who appreciate that true strength often comes from unexpected places. The gymnasium of Rockland Elementary School buzzed with excitement as students, teachers, and parents gathered for the annual Heroes Day celebration. Red, white, and blue decorations hung from the rafters, and a large banner reading, "Honoring Those Who Serve," stretched across the back wall of the stage where Principal Thaddeus Blackwood adjusted his signature bow tie. 10-year-old Wren Everwood sat quietly in the third row, her small fingers nervously tracing the worn edges of a photograph she'd brought. Unlike the other children, whose excitement manifested in fidgeting and whispering, Wren remained still, her eyes occasionally glancing down at the German Shepherd lying calmly at her feet. Onyx wasn't like other service dogs that occasionally visited the school. There was something in his amber eyes, an alertness, an intelligence, that seemed to transcend typical animal awareness. His black coat was immaculately groomed, and the vest he wore appeared standard at first glance, though certain patches and pockets seemed oddly specialized. Welcome, Rockland families, to our 12th annual Heroes Day. Principal Blackwood's voice boomed through the microphone. Today we honor the brave men and women who protect our community and country. He gestured to the sidelines where uniformed police officers, firefighters, and military personnel stood. Our students will introduce their special guests, and we'll learn about different forms of service. As the introductions began, Mrs. Hargrove, a parent volunteer coordinating the student presentations, checked her clipboard and frowned slightly. She approached Wren, bending down to speak quietly. "Wren, honey, I don't see your special guest checked in. Did someone come with you today?" Wren's gaze remained fixed on the photo in her hands. "She couldn't come. She's deployed." Mrs. Hargrove's expression softened with understanding. "That's okay. Why don't you still come up and tell everyone about her service? The other children would love to hear about it." Wren hesitated, glancing at Onyx, who had lifted his head at the conversation. Something passed between girl and dog, a moment of silent communication that Mrs. Hargrove couldn't quite interpret. "Okay," Wren finally said, tucking the photograph into her pocket. As other students took their turns, the atmosphere grew increasingly celebratory. Peyton Kessler, a popular fifth grader with perfect braids, proudly introduced her father, a decorated Army captain, who smiled and waved to applause. Sergeant Dempsey, another parent in Army fatigues, beamed as his son described his 3 tours of duty. When Wren's turn came, Mrs. Hargrove gently guided her to the microphone. Onyx rose smoothly, following without command to sit precisely at Wren's left side as she faced the audience. "My name is Wren Everwood," she began, her voice so soft that Principal Blackwood had to adjust the microphone. "My mom is Lieutenant Commander Bryony Everwood." She paused, taking a small breath. "She's a Navy SEAL." The moment the words left her lips, a ripple of reaction spread through the gymnasium. A few snickers from older students, raised eyebrows among parents, teachers exchanging glances. Principal Blackwood's smile faltered, then fixed itself into something more condescending. He leaned toward the microphone. "That's a lovely imagination you have, Wren." More laughter now, less restrained. Wren's cheeks flushed pink, but she stood straighter. "It's not imagination," she insisted, her voice strengthening slightly. "She is. She just can't talk about her missions." From the side of the room, Sergeant Dempsey chuckled, loud enough to be heard. "There are no female SEALs, honey. Never have been." Murmurs of agreement spread through the adult section. Wren's eyes began to shine with unshed tears, but her chin remained high. Principal Blackwood stepped forward, placing a hand on Wren's shoulder as he reclaimed the microphone. "I think this gives us a wonderful teachable moment about facts versus fiction," he announced to the audience. While we admire Wren's enthusiasm, it's important to understand that the Navy SEALs is one of the few military units that doesn't currently admit women. It's okay to be proud of our parents' real accomplishments without embellishment. The gymnasium had grown uncomfortably warm. Wren stood frozen at the microphone, the photograph half pulled from her pocket. Onyx remained perfectly positioned beside her, though those paying close attention might have noticed his ears had shifted forward, his body subtly more alert. "My mom is a SEAL," Wren repeated, quieter now, but with unmistakable conviction. Principal Blackwood's smile tightened. "Thank you, Wren. You can return to your seat now." As Wren walked back, Peyton Kessler's stage whisper carried clearly, "She's lying because her mom probably abandoned her." Several children laughed. A teacher shushed them, but the damage was done. Wren returned to her seat, her face now completely flushed, eyes locked forward to prevent tears from falling. Near the back of the gymnasium, an elderly man in a wheelchair observed the scene with unusual intensity. Hudson Caldwell, a decorated Vietnam veteran and grandfather to one of the first graders, adjusted his position slightly to keep Wren and her dog in his line of sight. Something about the child's certainty, and something about that dog, had caught his professional attention. When the assembly broke for refreshments, the gymnasium transformed into a reception area where uniformed heroes accepted handshakes and posed for photos with admiring families. Wren sat alone on a folding chair in the corner, Onyx positioned protectively beside her, while other students celebrated with their parents. "Poor thing," said Ms. Winterbrook, the fourth-grade teacher, loud enough for several nearby parents to hear. "Some children create fantasies to cope with absence. Her grandmother mentioned she hardly ever sees her mother." Principal Blackwood nodded sagely. "It's concerning when they can't separate imagination from reality at this age." Across the room, Sergeant Dempsey broke away from a conversation and approached Wren with what he intended as a compassionate smile. He crouched down to her level, his medals clinking slightly. "Hey there. My daughter went through a phase where she made up stories too," he said kindly. "It's okay to admit your mom's just regular military. That's still something to be proud of." Wren looked up, her expression suddenly fiercer than her small stature would suggest. "She told me never to lie about who she is," she replied firmly. "Well, that's good advice," Sergeant Dempsey continued, his condescension thinly veiled as patience. "So maybe you should follow it." Principal Blackwood approached, straightening his bow tie. "Perhaps we should call your grandmother to discuss this imagination issue, Wren. I'm sure Mrs. Everwood would want to know about this." As adults converged around her, Wren's hand unconsciously moved to a small titanium pendant hanging from a chain around her neck. The piece appeared custom-made, with unusual markings that resembled no standard military insignia. "May I see that photograph of your mother?" Mrs. Hargrove asked, extending her hand with what seemed like genuine interest. Wren clutched the photo tighter, but as she shifted it in her grasp, the corner became visible, showing a woman in the tactical gear, her face mostly obscured by shadow and specialized equipment. Onyx appeared in the image as well, though wearing different gear than his current vest. Hudson Caldwell had wheeled himself closer, observing the scene with increasing interest. His eyes narrowed when he caught a glimpse of the distinctive tattoo visible on the wrist of the woman in the photograph. "I don't appreciate being called a liar," Wren said, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying an unexpected strength. Onyx's posture shifted subtly, not aggressive, but somehow more present, more alert. "Nobody's calling you a liar, honey," Principal Blackwood said with strained patience. "Children your age often have trouble separating fantasy from reality." "I know what my mother does," Wren interrupted, a behavior so uncharacteristic that several nearby children gasped. "She made me memorize it exactly. Lieutenant Commander Brian E. Everwood, Naval Special Warfare Development Group." The specialized terminology caught Hudson Caldwell's attention immediately. His weathered hand tightened on the arm of his wheelchair. Principal Blackwood's expression hardened. "Wren, that's enough. Come with me to my office. We need to call your grandmother." Several parents had taken out their phones, recording what had become the dramatic highlight of the otherwise predictable Heroes' Day event. As Blackwood reached to guide Wren toward the door, Onyx shifted position, placing himself between the principal and the child without making any aggressive move. The subtle interception wasn't lost on Sergeant Dempsey, whose military training recognized the precision of the dog's movement. It wasn't typical service dog behavior. "That's an unusual dog," he commented, professional curiosity momentarily overriding his dismissiveness. Wren looked from the closing circle of adults to Onyx, then to the phones recording her humiliation. Her small shoulders, which had been progressively slumping under the weight of adult disbelief, suddenly straightened with decision. She knelt beside Onyx, placing one hand on the specialized vest he wore. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but in the sudden quiet of the observers waiting for more drama, her words were still audible, though in a language few recognized. "Validir operationale status nu," she said with perfect pronunciation. The transformation was immediate and extraordinary. Onyx, who had been the picture of calm service dog behavior, suddenly executed a series of movements with military precision. His body shifted into 3 distinct tactical positions in rapid succession, each one crisp and deliberate. Then came a pattern of vocalizations, not random barking, but a specific sequence of sounds that carried coded information. For his finale, Onyx performed a specialized maneuver that included pressing a concealed mechanism on his vest with his nose, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside gleamed a specialized K9 tactical identification tag, with official markings that meant nothing to most observers, but clearly signified something profound to those with military background. The gymnasium fell into stunned silence. Hudson Caldwell straightened in his wheelchair, eyes wide with recognition. "That's a SOCOM authentication protocol," he stated, his voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who knows exactly what they're witnessing. Sergeant Dempsey had instinctively taken a step back, years of military training, allowing him to recognize that no civilian dog trainer could have taught those maneuvers. "That's a Tier 1 operator validation sequence," he murmured, almost to himself. Principal Blackwood stood frozen, color draining from his face as understanding dawned. This wasn't a child's fantasy. This was something else entirely. From the back of the room, a woman in civilian business attire, who had been observing quietly throughout the event, stepped forward with unmistakable authority. Her movements carried the efficiency of someone accustomed to command. "I believe we owe this young lady an apology," she announced, her voice clear and commanding. "And I'll need those phones with recordings. Now." The students who had been mocking Wren now stared in awe as Onyx returned to perfect parade rest position beside her, the transformation from service animal to military asset, and back again, completed with flawless discipline. "Who are you?" Principal Blackwood managed to ask, his earlier condescension replaced with uncertainty. "Captain Ianthe Rhodes, Naval Intelligence," the woman replied, producing identification that made Sergeant Dempsey snap to attention automatically. "And this situation has just been classified." Captain Rhodes gestured toward the door. "Mr. Blackwood, I'll need to speak with you privately. Ms. Everwood and Onyx will join us." Her tone made it clear this was not a request. As Captain Rhodes escorted them toward a private classroom, the whispers erupted behind them. Phones that had been recording the child's humiliation were now documenting her vindication, despite Captain Rhodes's request to surrender them. Once inside the empty classroom, Captain Rhodes closed the door and turned to a shaken Principal Blackwood. "Lieutenant Commander Everwood serves with a specialized unit within Naval Special Warfare," she explained crisply. "Her service record is classified for national security reasons, which is why your searches showed no confirmation of Wren's claims." Blackwood's mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. "I had no idea such a unit existed." "That's rather the point of classified programs, Mr. Blackwood," Captain Rhodes replied without humor. She turned to Wren, her demeanor softening slightly. "Your mother taught you the emergency protocol. She would be proud of how brave you've been today." Wren nodded, some of the tension finally leaving her small shoulders. Onyx remained at her side, once again presenting as a standard service dog, though the illusion had been irrevocably broken for anyone who had witnessed his display. "I'm sorry," Principal Blackwood said to Wren, genuine contrition in his voice. "I should never have doubted you publicly like that." Wren accepted the apology with a dignity beyond her years. "My mom says most people don't mean to be unkind. They just don't know better yet." Outside the classroom, Hudson Caldwell waited in his wheelchair. When they emerged, he addressed Wren directly. "I served in an early version of the same program during Vietnam," he revealed quietly. "They didn't have women operators then, but they should have. Best decision they ever made, bringing them in. Captain Rhodes raised an eyebrow at him, but didn't contradict his statement. Would you like to speak with your mother? Rhodes asked Wren. The situation warrants breaking communications protocol. Wren's eyes lit up for the first time the day. 20 minutes later, in the principal's office, Wren sat before a secure tablet. The woman on the screen wore standard Navy fatigues, her face partially obscured and her location unidentifiable, but her eyes, the same unusual amber as her daughter's, were clearly visible. You did exactly right, Starling, Lieutenant Commander Bryony Everwood said, her voice slightly distorted by the secure connection. I'm so proud of you. They didn't believe me, Wren said simply. They do now, her mother replied with a hint of pride. I've been recalled. I'm coming home. The next day, Rockland Elementary held a special assembly. Principal Blackwood, looking somewhat shaken still, addressed the student body. Yesterday, we learned an important lesson about assumptions, he began. We're implementing a new educational program about women in military service, including the many roles that often go unrecognized. Despite Captain Rhodes's efforts, footage of Onyx's display had already spread online, generating millions of views and intense speculation about female operators in elite units. Official sources neither confirmed nor denied anything, which only fueled further interest. Former bullies approached Wren cautiously during lunch, asking respectful questions about Onyx's training. Peyton Kessler, who had led the mockery, offered a handmade apology card. Captain Rhodes returned that afternoon with a special commendation for Wren's exemplary conduct under pressure, presented on behalf of her mother's commanding officer. Sergeant Dempsey brought his daughter to formally apologize, admitting he had been wrong about female SEALs, and thanking Wren for teaching him something new. 3 weeks later, Wren sat on the front porch of her grandmother's house, Onyx beside her, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. A black SUV with government plates approached slowly, coming to a stop in front of the house. The back door opened, and Lieutenant Commander Bryony Everwood stepped out in her naval uniform. Her face, finally visible without shadows or tactical gear, showed the same determined expression as her daughter's, the same amber eyes that matched Onyx's unusual color. Mother and daughter embraced while Onyx performed a perfect formal greeting to his primary handler, a subtle routine that spoke volumes about their shared history and training. Bryony noticed the handmade "Welcome Home" banner hanging from the porch, covered with signatures from Wren's now supportive classmates. Looks like you've been busy changing minds, she said with a smile. They just needed to see the truth, Wren replied simply. As they walked inside together, Bryony reached into her pocket and placed a small medal in her daughter's hand. This belongs to you, for being as brave as any SEAL I've ever served with. The medal wasn't standard issue. It carried the same unusual markings as Wren's pendant, symbols that would mean nothing to civilians but everything to those within their classified community. That evening, Wren placed her Heroes Day photograph in a frame on the mantel, mother and daughter together with Onyx, both wearing matching titanium pendants that marked them as part of something extraordinary, something most of the world would never fully understand. Back at school the following Monday, the change in atmosphere was remarkable. Wren, once invisible or mocked, now found herself the center of respectful attention. Students who had laughed at her claims now asked questions about military service, while teachers who had dismissed her as a fantasist now cited her as an example of integrity. Principal Blackwood had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. The man who had publicly humiliated Wren now went out of his way to highlight her story, albeit in carefully vague terms that respected the classified nature of her mother's work. We're instituting a new Heroes Day policy, he announced during morning announcements. We recognize that many forms of service cannot be publicly acknowledged, and we will respect that some of our most important heroes work in ways we may never fully know. During lunch, Wren sat with a group of students who had previously ignored her, including Peyton Kessler, whose initial cruelty had transformed into something approaching admiration. Does your mom teach the dogs herself? Peyton asked, watching Onyx rest calmly beneath the cafeteria table. I can't really talk about specific training, Wren replied with newfound confidence. But military working dogs are usually trained at special facilities before they're assigned to their handlers. My dad says he was wrong, Peyton admitted, playing with her sandwich crust. He says there are all kinds of things about the military he doesn't know, even though he's been in for 15 years. Wren nodded, unsurprised. My mom says that's how it's supposed to work. The most important missions are the ones nobody hears about. After school, Wren found Hudson Caldwell waiting outside in his wheelchair, his granddaughter playing nearby on the playground. "May I speak with you a moment?" he asked formally. When Wren approached, he continued in a lower voice. "I served with the predecessors of your mother's unit. We didn't have the same technology then, but the principles were similar." Wren studied him carefully, Onyx alert at her side. "You had dogs too?" Hudson smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "Different animals, actually, but the same concept of specialized teams with unique capabilities." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small, weathered patch with faded insignia. This was unofficial, of course. Nothing about the program was ever acknowledged. Wren recognized elements of the design that matched markings on her mother's equipment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know you're part of a legacy," Hudson replied. "What your mother does, what all the women in her unit do, builds on the work of generations before them. It matters, even if most people never know." As Wren walked home, Onyx trotting beside her, she felt a new sense of belonging, not just to her mother, but to something larger, a continuous line of service stretching back through time. Lieutenant Commander Everwood was waiting on the porch when Wren arrived home, dressed in civilian clothes but still carrying herself with unmistakable military bearing. "Good day at school?" she asked, as Wren bounded up the steps. "Better than before," Wren confirmed. "Mr. Caldwell talked to me about his service. He knew about your unit." Bryony's expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened with interest. "Did he now? What did he tell you?" "Not specifics," Wren assured her. "Just that you're part of something that started a long time ago." "Hudson Caldwell," Bryony mused. "I'll have to look him up." That evening, as Wren completed her homework at the kitchen table, she watched her mother move around the house, reacquainting herself with civilian life. There was something both ordinary and extraordinary about seeing Lieutenant Commander Everwood, loading a dishwasher or checking the mail, the same hands that had executed classified missions now performing mundane household tasks. "How long will you be home?" Wren asked, the question she'd been holding back all day. Bryony paused, choosing her words carefully. "My cover was compromised when Onyx had to authenticate. The unit is reassigning me to a training role for the time being." "So, you'll stay?" Hope crept into Wren's voice. "I'll be based at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility in Virginia," Bryony confirmed. "We'll have to move, but I'll be home most nights." Wren's face broke into a smile that illuminated the kitchen more brightly than the overhead lights. "Grandmother can visit us there." "She certainly can," Bryony agreed. She sat down across from Wren, her expression growing more serious. "I need to ask you something important. The video of Onyx's authentication sequence has gone viral. How do you feel about that?" Wren considered the question with maturity that belied her 10 years. "I'm glad people know I wasn't lying. But I wish they didn't have to see Onyx's special training. That was supposed to be a secret." Bryony nodded approvingly. "That's exactly right. Sometimes revealing one truth means compromising another. Captain Rhodes is managing the situation, but there will always be questions now." "About female SEALs?" Wren asked. "About the entire program," Bryony corrected gently. "Onyx isn't just a military working dog. He's part of an elite program that pairs specially bred and trained animals with operators for missions that require unique capabilities. That's why his authentication protocol was so distinctive." Wren glanced at Onyx, who lay in his designated spot near the back door, seemingly ordinary once again. "Will he still be your partner?" "Always," Bryony assured her. "But our missions will be different now. We'll be training the next generation of handler teams." Later that night, as Bryony tucked her daughter into bed, Wren asked the question that had been lingering since Heroes Day. "Why did you tell me to reveal your real job if I was ever in trouble?" "You must have known people wouldn't believe me." Bryony sat on the edge of the bed, her amber eyes serious in the soft lamplight. "Because truth matters, even when it's difficult. And because I knew that if you ever needed to prove it, Onyx would be there to verify. The authentication protocol isn't just for dramatic effect. It's designed to confirm identity when all other credentials are compromised." "Like a password no one can fake," Wren suggested. "Exactly," Bryony smiled. Only better because it requires both human and animal working in perfect coordination, something almost impossible to replicate. She brushed a strand of hair from Wren's forehead. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we start packing for Virginia. As Wren drifted toward sleep, she heard her mother's quiet footsteps moving through the house, followed by Onyx's soft padding. Despite all the changes, despite the public exposure of secrets long kept, there was comfort in knowing her mother was finally home, and that their special family would remain together, continuing their service in a new way. She touched the titanium pendant around her neck, the matching symbol to her mother's, and felt proud to be part of something most people would never fully understand. A legacy of quiet heroes who asked for no recognition but deserved more than anyone else. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? 6 months later, the Everwood family had settled into their new life in Virginia. The modest house on the outskirts of Virginia Beach sat just a 15-minute drive from the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility where Bryony now worked. For the first time in years, Wren experienced the stability of a normal routine, a mother who came home most evenings, and the comfort of belonging. Onyx had adjusted to his semi-retirement with dignity, though Wren sometimes caught him staring alertly out the window, as if scanning for threats or waiting for a mission that wasn't coming. The specialized vest he'd worn at Heroes Day had been replaced by a simpler service dog harness for public outings, though his training remained evident in every precise movement. He misses active duty, Bryony commented one evening, noticing Wren watching the dog. Just like I do sometimes. But we adapt to new missions when needed. At Wren's new school, the viral video had preceded them. On her first day, whispers followed her through the hallways. That's her, the SEAL's daughter, students murmured. Some approached with curious questions, others with skepticism, but no one mocked her claims outright. The video had made that impossible. Principal Laurel Winston had called Wren and Bryony into her office that first morning, her manner respectful but concerned. We understand your situation is unique, she said carefully. The Department of Defense liaison explained certain aspects of your circumstances. We want to ensure Wren's education proceeds normally while respecting operational security requirements. We appreciate that, Bryony replied. Wren understands there are topics she can't discuss in detail, but she shouldn't have to deny who her family is. By spring, the initial sensation had faded. Wren had made friends who respected her boundaries, and teachers who treated her with the same expectations as any other student, albeit with occasional curious glances when Bryony attended school functions in her naval uniform. On a sunny Saturday in April, Bryony announced they had a special visitor coming. Hudson Caldwell contacted me through official channels. He's in the area for medical treatment at the VA hospital, and I've invited him for lunch. Wren perked up, remembering the elderly veteran from Heroes Day. The one who knew about your unit? Former Chief Petty Officer Caldwell served with a predecessor program in Vietnam, Bryony confirmed. Very few records exist from that era, but what he told you is accurate. When Hudson arrived, pushed in his wheelchair by a middle-aged man introduced as his son, his face lit up at the sight of Bryony in casual clothes. Despite the decades between their service, something unspoken passed between them, the recognition of shared experiences that few others could understand. Lieutenant Commander, he greeted formally, extending a weathered hand. Chief, Bryony replied with equal respect, clasping his hand firmly. Once settled on the back patio with lemonade, Hudson's son excused himself to run errands, leaving the three of them to talk more freely. I wasn't sure if I should contact you, Hudson admitted. Most of what we did back then is still classified, even 50 years later. But when I saw that video of your dog, I knew I had to reach out. You recognize the authentication sequence, Bryony stated. Different movements, same principle, Hudson confirmed. We used birds back then, messenger pigeons specially trained for covert operations. Completely different animal, but the concept of multi-species teams was the same. Wren listened, fascinated, as Hudson described a program from decades past that echoed her mother's work in ways she'd never imagined. The military never officially acknowledges these specialized units, he continued. Too unconventional, too difficult to explain to the public. But they've existed in various forms throughout history. Bryony nodded. The current program began experimental trials in 2013, went operational in 2017. I was in the second cohort. Women operators from the start, Hudson asked. Exclusively for certain mission profiles, Bryony confirmed, careful even now not to reveal specific capabilities. Our physical parameters and psychological assessments showed better compatibility with the canine assets for particular operational requirements. Hudson chuckled softly. They finally figured that out, did they? We had 2 female handlers unofficially assigned to our unit in 72, best in the program but never received formal recognition. As the afternoon progressed, Wren watched her mother and Hudson exchange carefully worded war stories, speaking in a language of implication and shared understanding that conveyed meaning while maintaining operational security. She realized this might be the first time her mother had spoken so openly with someone who truly understood the nature of her service. After Hudson left, Bryony seemed lighter somehow, as if sharing that connection had eased a burden she'd been carrying alone. It helps, knowing others came before, she told Wren as they cleared the lunch dishes, that our work is part of a lineage, even if the public records don't reflect it. The following week, Wren's teacher announced a special assignment for Military Appreciation Month. Students were asked to interview a family member who had served and create a presentation about their role. If your family member's service was classified, the teacher added, glancing meaningfully at Wren, you may present on their branch of service more generally. That evening, Wren approached her mother with the assignment sheet. Can I talk about what you really do? Not the classified parts, but more than just saying Navy. Bryony considered the question seriously. The existence of female operators in specialized units is becoming more widely acknowledged, even if the specific program remains classified. You can discuss my role as a handler in a military working dog team without detailing mission parameters. Wren worked diligently on her presentation, carefully navigating the line between honesty and security. She included photos of her mother in standard naval uniform, information about military working dogs throughout history, and even a carefully vetted picture of Onyx in his basic training harness. On presentation day, Wren spoke with quiet confidence, a far cry from the humiliated girl at Heroes Day. My mother serves as a handler in an elite military working dog program. While I can't discuss specific missions, I can tell you that teams like hers have saved countless lives through their specialized capabilities. Her classmates listened with genuine interest rather than skepticism. When one boy asked if her mother had ever been in combat, Wren answered with practiced care, military working dog teams deploy to many environments where their skills are needed. That's all I can say. The teacher, recognizing the careful navigation of classified information, redirected the conversation to the historical aspects of military canine programs that Wren had researched. After school, Bryony waited outside with Onyx, both of them drawing appreciative glances from passing students. "How did your presentation go?" she asked as they walked home. "Good," Wren replied. "I didn't reveal anything classified, but I didn't have to pretend you're just regular Navy either." Bryony smiled. "Finding that balance is a skill in itself. You handled it well." "Mom," Wren asked after a moment, "do you miss active deployment?" Bryony considered the question, her pace slowing slightly. "I miss the purpose, the immediate impact of the work. But training the next generation of handler teams matters too, maybe even more in the long run." Because of what happened with me in the video, there was a hint of guilt in Wren's question. That accelerated the timeline, but this transition was always coming, Bryony assured her. Even elite operators eventually move to training roles. It's how we ensure the program continues and improves. The following weekend, Bryony took Wren to the training facility for a carefully controlled family day. Much of the base remained off limits, but in a designated demonstration area, Wren watched in awe as new handler canine teams showcased basic capabilities for family members with appropriate clearance. "Will Onyx ever work with another handler?" Wren asked as they observed a training exercise. "No," Bryony said definitively. "The bond between handler and canine is permanent. Onyx will retire completely when I eventually leave active service. He'll be our family dog, though he'll never really be just a pet." As if hearing his name, Onyx glanced up from his perfect seated position, amber eyes alert and intelligent. A young female lieutenant approached them, her respect for Bryony evident in her demeanor. "Ma'am, the new trainees are ready for your demonstration when convenient." "Thank you, Lieutenant Forrest." "We'll be right there," Bryony replied. She turned to Ren. "Would you like to watch?" Ren nodded eagerly, following her mother to a training ring where 8 women and their canine partners waited at attention. For the first time, Ren witnessed her mother in her professional element, commanding the respect of operators who represented the future of the program. "Today we'll demonstrate advanced authentication protocols," Bryony announced. She nodded to Ren. "My daughter will assist to show how these commands can be executed by someone other than the primary handler in emergency situations." Pride swelled in Ren's chest as she stepped forward. Under her mother's guidance, she demonstrated with Onyx the same sequence that had silenced a gymnasium full of doubters 6 months earlier, though this time to an audience of respectful professionals rather than mocking civilians. "The authentication protocol serves multiple purposes," Bryony explained to the trainees. "It confirms the identity of authorized personnel when conventional credentials are compromised, and it validates the specialized training of the canine asset in situations where the team's capabilities might be questioned." Later, as they walked to the car, Ren noticed her mother standing taller, more like the confident operator she'd glimpsed in that worn photograph than the reserved figure who navigated parent-teacher conferences. "You're different here," Ren observed. "This is where I can fully be myself," Bryony admitted. "Both sides of myself, the operator and the mother. For years I had to keep those identities separate, but now they can exist together." As they drove home, Ren thought about the journey from that humiliating Heroes Day to this moment of shared pride and purpose. The pendant around her neck, matching her mother's, caught the afternoon sunlight, a symbol of the extraordinary legacy she had inherited. "Hudson called me yesterday," Bryony said as they neared home. "The Veterans Affairs Office has finally acknowledged aspects of his classified service. He'll be receiving a long overdue commendation next month." "Because of us?" "Because of the video," Ren asked. "Partly," Bryony confirmed. "Once certain capabilities become public knowledge, even indirectly, it sometimes opens the door for recognition of those who served in related programs. Your courage that day created a ripple effect." That evening, as Ren prepared for bed, she paused at her dresser where the Heroes Day photo now stood proudly displayed. Next to it sat a framed screenshot from the viral video, capturing the moment when Onyx revealed the truth and restored her dignity. From tragedy to triumph, from humiliation to honor, the journey had transformed not just her life, but potentially the lives of others who had served in silence. "Mom," she called down the hallway, "I think I know what I want to be when I grow up." Bryony appeared in the doorway, eyebrow raised in question. "I want to work with the animals, like you," Ren said decisively. "Not necessarily as a SEAL, but in the program somehow." Bryony smiled, neither encouraging nor discouraging, simply accepting. That path will always be there for you, if you choose it. And if not, you'll find another way to serve what matters to you. As Ren drifted towards sleep, she felt Onyx settle on the floor beside her bed, his customary position when Bryony was still moving around the house. The dog's presence brought a sense of security, not just physical protection, but the comfort of being connected to something larger than herself, a legacy of quiet service that stretched back through generations. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Someone whose greatest achievements had to remain hidden from the world?